This is the last segment of my conversation with Carlo. We get real about being truly agile. I've seen lately of this great debate on LinkedIn in particular by quote unquote business experts saying that companies are not truly agile. So they're implementing agile practices, but they're not truly agile because leadership still wants to incorporate waterfall practices. So, my question
hmm
to you is: have you ever worked for a company that was truly agile? And do you think it's possible to be fully agile in the work that you do?
Again, I'm not going to throw jargon out at everybody, but I think that to overuse the word scale, I think that would depend on two different things. Again, scale of the organization and the community in which that communication is working in. So I think that if you're working in a more government style, like labor department or Department of Transportation or something like that, it's going to have a more of an interest towards something that's hierarchical, something that's bureaucratic, all those kinds of things, despite the fact that they want to become agile. So the closest they might be able to get is something that's more hybrid. If you're working for something that's smaller, a small organization that's fleet of foot, I don't want to say a startup, but maybe a small startup, maybe like a software development company or an NGO or a nonprofit, where you have that team of individuals that are going out there. And when I say a team of individuals, this could be something that's an organization of maybe 50 to 100. That's when I'm saying a small organization, 50 to
Okay.
100, as opposed to like 100,000 or something like that, like the military or something. So, I think that you can find, but you've got to be the disciple or you've got to be the keeper of the flame.
Champion, right?
You have to be the champion. Thank you. You have to be the champion. You can't just go in there and everybody, all hands, everybody's got to participate in it. It can't be just left up to the leadership to just be imposing it from the top down. Everybody needs to be working that in the spirit of it. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So I think that if you find some true believers in, like I saw, the smaller scale organization, a startup, nonprofit, an NGO. And look, NGOs and nonprofits make great salaries too. I mean, just don't let the words, nonprofit, fool a person. You can make 70, 75, $100,000 in some of the things in the management areas, as long as you've got, again, the right skills and qualifications. You'll be writing grants, you'll be doing RFPs, you'll be doing all kinds of stuff like that, working in developing countries. You'll be in Thailand. Again, these are the heydays of travel. But the reason I'm bringing those up is because that's what I know. And that's where I found the greatest opportunity to implement stand-ups, daily stand-ups, do storyboards, do Kanban, bringing all these things in. They were more amenable and open to it because of their mission. They weren't broad. There weren't anonymous employees lost in a sea of bureaucracy, in other words. So that's my
Gotcha.
take on it.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. My stance is, even from a traditional project management, we were never truly like 100% PMI PMBOK project management. You
Right.
find that you're tailoring the practices of better practice to make it make sense for your organization. So I see the same thing when it comes to agile. You just, because of the hierarchy, like you said, scale, the organizational culture, those EEFs and OPAs,
Mm-hmm.
you have
Mm-hmm.
to, yes, be the champion. But I'm a huge believer the power of agile, even just a little bit, can mean so much for the organization. So
Very
when
much.
people kind
Yeah.
of, turn their nose up and, say, oh, just because you're doing 15-minute, stand-up meetings and you have a backlog doesn't make you agile. No, but we're working towards it. The fact that we got them to
It's an
change their thinking.
aspirational.
Yeah.
It's aspirational for sure. And I think they're not true believers and da 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 da, but they're going to see the results if you're implementing it and you're doing it and you're trying to practice some of that stuff. And like I said, some community, I believe in picking your battles. I very much pick my battles
Absolutely.
in such a way that I'm going to amass my social capital and apply my social capital where I believe it's going to receive some of the greatest effect. Otherwise, in some places, you know, I don't want to discourage myself and discourage others. And, you know, so it's just one of those things. Compromises is one of those things.
And you just brought up a topic I think I need to make sure I follow up on about social capital, because I think that is something that PMs woefully lack. And, you know, just like in any job, you're very skilled technically, and then you get promoted to PM and you were never taught the importance of social capital. Like you were always just—
That's from my supervisor.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Just before I came and spoke to you, and I was marching out of the parking lot, my mentor, my current supervisor, we were having that very discussion that led, you know, into this thing, which was, you know, being able to listen and, you know, being a listener and not just being the guy that's coming in and saying, you know, well, I've got this experience of all of my 20 years in the Marine Corps. Nobody wants to. They'll be banging their heads against the wall. They're like, gosh, we got to listen to this war story again, or this guy, da 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 da. So being, like you said, empathetic, and that point, you start getting some of that, like you said, building your social capital. So that way, when the time comes in a highly matrixized environment where you just can't be doing top-down driven, you know, yes, I need you to do this. Yes, I need. No, it's like, hey, you know, I need some help here. People are more likely to aggregate around you and aggregate around the problem. And like, no, I'm there with you, Carlo, or da 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 da. And it's, you know, they see that because you care and you've been listening and asking about their kids, not patronizing them, but like I said, you've been following up with them and their lifestyles. And like I said, I realize that might be in some blind spots that I have in some areas because I'm a little bit older now. And, you know, there's millennials out there. God bless them. So, not a boomer, Gen X.
I'm a Zennial. I'm right in between.
I'm a Gen X.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Gen X. Keanu Reeves and all those are Gen X. So, you know, yeah.
Will Smith, yeah. I'm
working on my millennial skills. I don't speak cryptocurrencies yet. I know it's a big deal out there. I just haven't had the time to dig down and drill into it. But I'm gonna have to get hip at some point and start learning what that stuff is, because that's what all the cool kids are talking about. You know,
the first stage is not to say get hip. Okay. You can't say that. Because my kids called me out on that one. Yeah, you can't say I'm going to be hip like you. They're like, what?
I have to put that in my moleskin. I'll have to bulletize that. Put
that in your journal. Nobody does that either.
Put that in my journal. Yeah, don't make overtures. Do not, you know, try to act hip.
One certification we did not get into was about the discipline Agile. And something that you mentioned earlier was how you valued or appreciated the ACP because it was much more from a global understanding of the different practices of Agile. And that's what the discipline Agile is about. So they have, for PMI members, you can certainly purchase this if you're not a PMI member, called Choose Your WOW. So the way you want to work. I think that's the way of working. I think that's what the WOW is. And the irony is, I just find it so funny, they call it disciplined Agile, but then the definition of it is that use whatever you want, freely use whatever practice makes sense for you. But they have this great diagram to understand the flow of the different Agile certs from the PMI perspective, how they flow into the discipline Agile. So I'll make sure I have that in the show notes. But my understanding is they do have different levels. The first level, there is no application as rigorous as you have to go through with the PMP and PMI ACP. But then when you want to go to the next level, the requirement is taking that first level discipline Agile. So they call it the discipline Agile Scrum Master, I believe is what it's called. And then, you know, a coach, but you'd have to look up that information. I am done with my Agile certifications. You know, to your point, I've done the research and, you know, with training and advisory services that I provide, my clients are not asking me for additional certifications. They're just not. And if they are, I will definitely connect them with others who would serve them better. I know my zone of genius. So how can people get in contact with you if you would like that? What's the best way of just Hi.
I always point at LinkedIn is always your best bet. LinkedIn is your best bet because it's like I lurk there all the time to look for like best practices, lessons learned. And every once in a while I'll post a funny meme there, but I think LinkedIn is probably the best way to go. I'm fully transparent, full disclosure about all my, what have yous. And if a person feels that there was something that I said that they want to follow up on or ask me, or maybe even like they want to provide me some scoop or some advice and say, Carla, you know what? That's probably, we got a better way of doing things like that. I'm totally open. It's always a learning experience. So, I'd be happy for people if they want to look me up on Carlo Nino. I've got like a coat, tie. I've got your typical thing going on there with the beard and mustache. I'm smiling the best that I can. So, yeah.
Okay, and I can vouch for that. And you've got a lot of followers, so he's well connected, folks. Maybe there is, somebody that you found in your dream profile, and lo and behold, Carlo's connected with him. I'm just going to put him out there. I don't know if he does it, but maybe there's a connection that can be made from that standpoint. So I wholeheartedly believe in the power of what LinkedIn can do for you in making connections. And sometimes, don't go it alone. If there's someone, as Carlo had mentioned, that can, serve as your quote unquote sponsor of your application, and they can push your resume through the door, you still have to interview. So, don't feel like, oh, I want to do this on my own. No. They're getting your resume through the door. It's still up to you to not screw it up during the interview. So you still have to do the work. You still have to shine. And just know that, the 2,000 plus people I have trained, if I decide I want to close up shop and get a job out in the corporate world, I'm going to capitalize on that. Like I've had way too many job offers while teaching for me to go out there cold and just like, maybe someone will see my resume. No. I'm going to like, hey, remember me, your favorite teacher? I'm ready to go back in.
There you go.
Thanks so much for listening to this series. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with Carlo. I learned so many great nuggets from him, and I hope you did too. Be sure to connect with Carlo. His LinkedIn URL is in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening.